Welcome to Newshour. Tonight, a bold and controversial proposal is making waves in Washington and Tel Aviv. According to Reuters, US and Israeli officials are holding quiet discussions about a potential American-led administration in Gaza should Hamas be removed from power. The idea, still in its early stages, has sparked alarm among Palestinians and skepticism from regional allies. Could this be a pathway to stability or just another foreign imposition? We begin with a closer look at what's being proposed and what's at stake. Then we speak to our correspondent in the US and special guests in both Istanbul and Gaza for their take.
In the aftermath of intense conflict in Gaza, the United States and Israel are reportedly exploring the establishment of a temporary US-led administration to govern the region. Though still in its early stages, the proposal reflects a growing urgency among policymakers to chart a post-war course for Gaza that avoids a return to Hamas control while attempting to avert a full Israeli reoccupation. The initiative aims to stabilize the territory until a longer-term Palestinian governance framework can take shape. According to early outlines, the envisioned administration would incorporate Palestinian technocrats selected for their neutrality and professional credentials, but would explicitly exclude both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. That decision alone has drawn criticism, raising doubts about the legitimacy of any governing body imposed from the outside. Critics have also drawn comparisons to the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq, which became a lightning rod for anti-American sentiment and insurgency. International reactions are already beginning to reflect deep divides. While some Israeli leaders have floated the idea of involving moderate Arab nations such as Egypt, Jordan, or the United Arab Emirates in a multilateral framework, those governments have so far shown little enthusiasm. Meanwhile, nations like Norway and Iceland have condemned Israel's parallel plans to evacuate Gaza's population, calling such measures a violation of international law and warning of possible consequences. On the ground, the humanitarian crisis is reaching breaking point. Dozens of community kitchens have shuttered due to lack of supplies, worsening the food insecurity faced by over 2 million people. Fuel and medicine remain scarce. American officials have said a breakthrough on food aid delivery is close, but timelines remain vague, and aid groups are warning that time is running out. As the debate over Gaza's future unfolds, one fact is clear. Any external administration will face intense scrutiny, both from the region's population and the wider international community. For many Palestinians, the idea of another foreign-led authority feels like history repeating itself. And for Washington, the challenge lies not just in managing logistics, but in navigating the politics of trust, legitimacy, and long-term peace.
Okay, let's go to Washington now and hear from our correspondent there, Nick Harper. Nick, how has the national media responded to this proposal then? And what response have we seen from both Republicans and Democrats?
Well, what we're hearing is that high-level consultations have taken place between the US and Israel, really looking to what happens to the Gaza Strip after the conflict ends. And according to Reuters, it has been proposed that the US would lead an administration to take care of affairs in the Gaza Strip. We're told that this would happen after the conflict ends, and it would need for Gaza to be both demilitarized and stabilized first. This transitional government would then take time to work out the next steps, and during that time we're told that they would look for a Palestinian-led administration. But we're also told that Hamas and the Palestinian Authority would not be part of that administration. And of course, there is no guarantee that a suitable Palestinian-led coalition could be formed or could be created. And importantly, there's no timeline being set on this. It's unclear whether this would be a matter of weeks, a matter of months, or potentially a matter of years that the United States would have control of the Gaza Strip. Now, so far, there has been no comment from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office nor the State Department here in the United States. But as you would imagine, reaction to all of this has been particularly varied. We've seen lots of correspondents, writers, academics weighing in. A Middle East correspondent for The Economist has quite simply called this plan bonkers. A writer at the New Yorker magazine has called it madness. And a professor at Maryland University here in the United States has said it is a crazy and dangerous idea besides being illegal. And part of the worry is past comments from Donald Trump. You may remember a few months ago he said that the US would take control of Gaza, would forcibly displace Palestinians, and then look to rebuild it, suggesting really for him that this was a real estate opportunity. He said he would turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. And part of the concern was, beyond the forcible displacement of Palestinians, what would happen to them and how would the US president profit from those potential deals? It is something that we're told has been discussed behind closed doors, no confirmation of it yet, but there are certainly people out there who are very worried that if the US were to take over the Gaza Strip, it would move things in a very difficult and potentially dangerous direction. Nick Harper for A News in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much, Nick. Nick Harper for us there in Washington. OK, let's cross live now to Gaza and speak to Motea Abumsaba, journalist currently in the central area of the Gaza Strip in Deir el-Balah city. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Give me your thoughts then on these proposed plans. Again, it's someone from outside Gaza deciding how Gaza should be run.
Yes, first of all, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Let me say that as Palestinian civilian and journalist based here in Gaza, have been living this ongoing genocidal and annihilation war practiced and continued against the Palestinian people, we cannot deny by any means that the US administration is a vital complicit in this genocidal war. We are talking about more than 19 consecutive months into the onset of this genocidal war so far. And the Israeli and the US administration has been facilitating and enabling this genocide by subsidizing and providing the Israeli occupation forces with everything they need in order to continue their crimes and atrocities against the Palestinian people. It has become a matter of fact for everyone else across the globe that the Palestinian children, the Palestinian babies, and the Palestinian women are still being killed and slaughtered by the Israeli bombs, by the Israeli fighter jets. So this makes it clear that the US administration has the blood of the Palestinian people on its hands, and they are still fighting foot to foot and shoulder to shoulder with the Israeli occupation forces. Needless to mention that they are still politically supporting the Israeli occupation forces with their genocidal attacks against Gaza. They are still, as you know, giving more justifications and blame excuses for those atrocities to be committed against the Palestinian people in Gaza Strip. So it is normal for the US administration to put forward such proposals in order to, as you know, in order to liquidate the Palestinian cause and the right of the Palestinian people. It is not surprising from the US administration, which is, as I mentioned, continuing its support unequivocally to the Israeli occupation to put forward such proposals that, as you know, that no one can deny, as you know, supporting the Israeli regime, and they are still trying just to liquidate and finish the Palestinian rights. Nothing has been proposed till this moment, let me say, serves the rights of the Palestinian people. The only thing that they are still concerned about is just how to serve the interests of the Israeli occupation forces, to give the Israeli occupation forces more, as you know, benefits at the expense of the Palestinian rights. So all in all, what we can say clearly is another desperate attempt proposed and presented by the US administration, which is on the Israeli side, absolutely, in order to liquidate the rights of the Palestinian people, to overcome the rights of the Palestinian people to live in peace and dignity on their lands. This is on one hand. On the other hand, no one would force the Palestinian people to leave their land. No one would finish the Palestinian resistance from Gaza Strip. Even and all these proposals talking about Hamas movement and trying just to, as you know, to push Hamas movement to cede its weapons and its military resistance against the Israeli occupation forces would fail, because if we want to look deeper at Hamas movement is a vital part of the Palestinian resistance, of the Palestinian population in Gaza Strip. And the right of resistance is a genuine and fundamental right for any occupied people. This is what the Palestinian resistance is doing and practicing on the ground here. And all in all, what is happening right now on the ground is a continuation of the genocidal war that the Israeli occupation forces are still waging against the Palestinian people. All those proposed plans actually are stemming from this attitude that the Israeli occupation forces and the U.S. administration have towards the Palestinian people, which is absolutely, as you know, finishing the rights of the Palestinian people, trying to create a new Nakba for the Palestinian people in order to entrench the occupation on the Palestinian land, in order to annihilate Palestinian existence from elsewhere in the Palestinian territories.
Motaya, let me just explore that a bit more, because it is very interesting actually to speak to someone who is in Gaza, to hear from the views of people in Gaza. Everybody around the world has views on this, but particularly important to get the views of people who are actually there. I'd like to understand this element of foreign control a little bit better from the perspective of the people in Gaza. Many critics of Hamas around the world have pointed to the difference between resistance and fighting for survival, and then government, and the latter being something that requires a different approach, a different set of skills. What is the current perspective from the people in Gaza at the moment when it comes to the type of government that they're looking for?
Well, for the Palestinian people, as you know, they are absolutely frustrated with the current situation, because they are still under this ongoing war, as I've mentioned, for more than 19 consecutive months, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel for them to this moment, because the attacks are still maintained brutal and cruelly, are still ubiquitous, covering all areas of Gaza Strip. What is really crazy is that they are still maintained in the same ferocity, and we understand clearly that every day we have dozens of the Palestinian civilians being slaughtered by the Israeli occupation forces. Needless to mention that the Israeli regime has been weaponizing the humanitarian supplies at the beginning of this genocidal war. Till this moment, they are still using those humanitarian supplies for warfare against the Palestinian people, and they have been talking about this explicitly. Even if you still remember, you have Gallant, the former minister in the Israeli hardline government, he, with the very beginning of this war, saying that no fuel, no water, no electricity would be allowed into Gaza Strip. So this, let me say, drew the outlines of the Israeli policy towards Gaza Strip. And so it is normal for the Palestinian people to have this, let me say, this level of frustration among them, because they do not have any access to the basic humanitarian essentials and needs, and they are just the only thing that they care about right now is just to end these atrocities and to have any significant access to the basic humanitarian essentials and needs. Once again, let me say clearly that what is happening right now is not about Hamas. We should never buy this narrative and this propaganda that this war is against Hamas and this war is about, as you know, the resistance and the fighters and about even the Israeli captives. It is nowhere close to the Israeli allegations that they are doing this to the Palestinian people because of Hamas movement, because doing in Gaza Strip for more than 19 consecutive months in a row without any cessation is a real annihilation war against the Palestinian people. This is the only thing that explains, let me say, this mass killing of the Palestinian people, is starving the Palestinian population. Let me say this, the Israeli army is advanced enough in order to be able to target every single Palestinian resistance fighter alone. But however, they tend and resort to targeting Palestinian people and killing the Palestinian civilians in wholesale. They do not have any problem to kill dozens of the Palestinian people.
Matteo, so sorry to cut in
Once
there,
again, what is
Matteo.
happening in Gaza is far away from the Israeli lies that they are targeting the Palestinian resistance.
Thank you, Matteo. And sorry to cut in. I just want to ask you a bit more about the desperate suffering, obviously, of the situation of many people in Gaza at the moment, and humanitarian aid. What is the situation like there now on the ground? What is it that people in Gaza are calling for? What more could be done right now to get more aid to the people who need it?
Well, it's crystal clear for everyone else that the current situation is beyond catastrophic for the Palestinian people. This is how the Israeli occupation forces are practicing their genocidal war. The Palestinian people here in Gaza not able to secure any of their basic humanitarian essentials, basically the food items, because as you know, we are talking about 68 consecutive days since the Israeli occupation forces closed and sealed off Gaza's crossings, and they are preventing the entry of on the flow of the humanitarian supplies to the people here. So this is why the people on the ground are no longer able to obtain anything to eat. We are not exaggerating to say this. Even the community kitchens and the charity kitchens scattered in all areas of Gaza, they were providing and supplying those Palestinian families with the tiny amounts of food. Now they are shut down. They are no longer able to operate on the ground because they do not have even the basic food items to present anything to the people here on the ground. So this reflects how catastrophic the situation is for the Palestinian people. Needless to mention that the vast majority of the bakeries have also shut down because of the lack of the flour that the people use to obtain and get here in Gaza Strip. Let me say clearly that the current situation for the Palestinian people in terms of the humanitarian conditions is absolutely unprecedented. The catastrophe, let me say, unprecedented levels. Needless to mention that even when it comes to the drinkable water and even the clean water, they are no longer available for the Palestinian people after the Israeli regime has cut off the water supplies to Gaza Strip. If you still remember, they have targeted the desalination water bomb in the central area of Gaza Strip. So it's all-out war, let me say, targeting the Palestinian people internally. And this brings us to square one of this equation, that what is happening on the ground is nowhere close to the Israeli allegations that they are targeting the Palestinian resistance. They are targeting the Palestinian population. They are targeting Palestinian civilians on purpose. And this is the main purpose. This serves the overarching aim of this war against the Palestinian people, which is targeting the Palestinian existence in Gaza Strip. And by the way, we are still witnessing a real surge of Palestinian children diagnosed with the malnutrition, admitted to the hospitals here in Gaza Strip. Those hospitals, as you know, are still grappling with these catastrophic and unbearable conditions due to the lack of the medical supplies, whereas, as you know, the Israeli regime hasn't allowed for anything, including the medical supplies, into Gaza Strip. It is so horrific for the Palestinian people to experience and live these circumstances. Once again, time and the clock is ticking for the Palestinian people unless there is any urgent interference in order to stop this Israeli madness of weaponizing this humanitarian supplies against the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people in Gaza Strip would be living a real catastrophe in Gaza Strip. What is happening in Gaza Strip is unbelievable, and we are unable even to describe the level of the catastrophe that people are living here in Gaza Strip.
Okay, a catastrophic situation as you described there. Matteo, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us from the Gaza Strip. Much appreciated. Okay, let's now go to Istanbul in Turkey and speak to Onur Erim, President of Dragoman Strategies. Very nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Erim, on Newshour. Your views on this then, this proposed solution from President Trump, is it in any way realistic, or do you think it could actually end up causing more harm than good?
I do believe that this would be the one of the worst decisions to make to better the situation. as one of the worst, because the worst would be to give the same or give this option led by Israel. So there's about 193 nations in the UN. My pick for this post to give it to US would be 194. Very simple equation. The US has never, I can't think of any region, any country in the history of the US, which is roughly about 300 years, that they have not brought more blood, more sweat, and more tears to the nation that they went to liberate or make it more democratic. So I don't think it's a good idea. That's number one. Number two, I don't think involvement or heavy influence by Americans, especially by US, let alone a non-Muslim country, would be welcomed by the Palestinians. Furthermore, and I think this is the real point, I don't think the Palestinians will or should accept any kind of involvement by anybody else when they have the full right to sovereignly, control what happens in their governance.
Mr. Emin,
having said that,
sorry to cut across you then. I mean, that's a very coherent argument. I suppose the riposte to that would be, if the Americans should not intervene, if others should not intervene, who should intervene to help? Because I think one of the things that all parties can agree on is very clearly there are very large numbers of people who are suffering, who are waiting for a response. Who should help if it shouldn't be the Americans?
Yes, exactly. That was my next point. However, we are in such a dire situation for the civilians of Gaza, especially, if not the entire Palestine, that I think we're at a point in time where we put our best option scenarios to the side for the time being and just resolve the very immediate issues like direct humanitarian aid. So there may be, just for a short time being, a more of a colorful, maybe the word, of an international coalition to at least make sure that there is food and there is medicine being supplied to Gaza, and maybe for that time being involve other nations, although may not be the optional thing to do, may definitely not be the best thing to do. But right now, human life, because of basic malnutrition, because of basic medicine, lack of basic medicine, are being lost. These are talking about children, teenagers, women, men, just civilians. So yes, you are right. Maybe this is a time that we need to also visit less than best solution. Or less than optimal ways. But right now we have a bigger crisis. We have to make sure that the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, and I actually myself keep saying Gaza. It's actually the people of Palestine, the entire nation, not just the Strip, are actually have access to basic food items and basic medicinal supplies. That's what we should do first. And for that, because human life is at stake, I personally would consider any kind of a solution, at least till this very, very major crisis is over.
Well, I'd like to talk about some of these neighbouring countries too, because obviously so much help is needed. It's such an incredibly seemingly difficult problem to solve, to try and break out of this stalemate. We've seen aid coming from where you are at the moment in Turkey. We've seen aid coming from other countries, Azerbaijan, for example. We know there's strong concern from other Arab countries in the region. What should the response, has it been adequate? Has the response from those other countries been adequate? And is there a place for a different configuration of a response for those countries to try something new?
Look, if it was the subject was, if anything else, I could have, maybe understand what is going on from especially the neighboring or the regional countries, or how they react or how they should react. However, it actually does just baffle me that at least for supply of basic food items and supply of medical supplies. That countries like Turkey, countries like Azerbaijan are the front runners. I think the countries in the region, besides from their own country's relationship with the West or with Israel, should, at least for these two subjects especially, overcome whether it would hurt their relationship with the West or with Israel, and just insist, do much more to at least make sure that these supply chains are not broken. So people there actually have something to eat. You know, we're not talking about steak and eggs. We're talking about basic food items, sugar, grain, wheat, rice, very basic stuff. And I think they've been reluctant, or at least they have not been as forthcoming as countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan and some of the other few of the other European nations in pressing USA, in pressing EU, in pressing Israel to say, hey, listen, all right, we'll resolve everything, but let's make sure this humanitarian flow of supply chain for food and for medicine, at least, is not disrupted. So I am very, very disappointed in their lack of taking further action to make sure that these supplies were sustained. Unfortunately, it's not. It's with the efforts of few countries that actually something is still going there.
And could because as you rightly point out, the need is such a universal human need. Everybody can see the suffering, whatever particular side of the argument you fall upon. Because it is so serious, is there a need for other state actors perhaps to get more involved that aren't so inextricably linked to either side of the conflict, or even non-state actors to get involved to see if there are other ways that aid could be purchased and disseminated to the people who are suffering?
I believe so, but this is a long conversation. I will just sum it up for whatever the reason is. I mean, I have several ideas about the reasons, but the U.S. administrations, be it back in Biden's administration, be it Trump's administration, are so single-sidedly has been backing up Israel, or actually Netanyahu, to be honest with you, and his way of trying to handle this, probably to save his own career, to save his own political reign, is that it became very, very hard to act otherwise, because the United States administrations, both Biden and Trump, they don't want to hear anything about Palestine, about Palestinians, about Gaza Strip, unless it is the explicit view of Netanyahu's government. This is for sure. And this makes it very hard for other nations. As soon as a question is raised, they will try to hit you with the Hamas argument. I have heard many arguments, some credible, some not so much, as to Hamas being a terrorist organization. Oh, excuse me, but I have also heard as many credible arguments that Hamas is actually the force of the Palestinians that may not always be using, conventional warfare tactics, or going into guerrilla tactics or otherwise. So, but when we are talking about, I think.
Oh no! Sorry to cut across you again, but isn't this part of the problem? It's very interesting actually to bring this up. That these are, to some degree, the same debates, the same discussions, the same bits of that have been put forward year after year, decade after decade, and that really it just seems to be that the stalemate just gets compounded deeper and deeper and deeper.
Of course, because that's a perfect excuse not to. That's a perfect excuse for the U.S., for Netanyahu's government, not to, the perfect excuse to starve kids. It's a perfect excuse to kill kids. It's a perfect, because as soon as you open your mouth, oh, but it's Hamas. Well, so what? I mean, have you ever seen any kind of a debate in the Western world about Hamas, other than that they're being a terrorist organization? Let's go back to 1930s. Let's go back to before the made-up state of Israel was formed, where the Jewish terrorists were terrorizing Palestine. You know, when you pull the argument to Hamas, yes, from the first minute, they will not hear anything else, and you will always lose because, again, USA is one-sidedly for the last at least two administrations have been siding with Israel, and they will not hear anything against what Netanyahu claims as with his government, except when the point brings out that Israel is right or Netanyahu is right. You know, you can't talk about anything. You can talk about little kids, toddlers being shot by a sniper rifle, and they find a way to whitewash that. They bomb in the middle of the day a hospital and claiming that it's a Hamas post, which then turns out in many cases it's not. They whitewash that. So again, it's like pissing in the wind. You know, there's just no way. And I think there has to be an enough coalition of international voices, government and non-government, trying to stop and talking to US and Israel.
Mr. Aram, thank you. So, talking of those international forces, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Why do you think, or do you think that the United Nations, for example, has been vocal enough, has been forthright enough in coming forward to speak about some of these terrible things that you've just described? What is has it all gone a bit quiet?
I actually seen quite sincere efforts from the UN in trying to be more vocal. However, and Trump said this outright, he didn't hide it. He said, we are the biggest financiers, we'll cut the money unless you think like us. Very basic, very simple. He said this out loud. He didn't even feel the need to conceal this ideology. He said, we're paying you the money. We're the biggest financiers of the UN. If you don't do what we say about Israel, Palestine, no money. We'll get out. So this is very blunt. And I have seen, especially from the UN reporter for the region and other actually UN officials. They actually, some of them are trying to show quite sincere and quite actually bold actions. However, we have a saying in Turkish, he who pays the bill makes the rules. So this is what exactly US is saying. I pay the bill, I make the rules. You don't like it, tough.
Okay, been very interesting. Onur Erim, talking to us from Istanbul in Turkey. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Thank you. And that's all from us for now. As Washington and Tel Aviv weigh what could be one of the most consequential foreign policy experiments in years, questions remain clearly over legitimacy, logistics, and local consent. Can foreign governance then ever pave the way to peace? Or is this another chapter in a long history of imposed solutions? Well, we'll be watching very closely indeed. For more updates and analysis, head to our website. From all of us here on NewsHour, thank you very much for watching and good night.